This video accompanies the Spring 2025 collection of embroidered crochet plates and also the figurines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 5 basic stitches, all of which are covered in the sampler plates so that you've got all the different embroidery stitches, and then talk through one more, slightly more advanced one, so the whipped back stitch, and then give you a good look at all the different techniques and how I've chosen to use them on both the plates and the figurines. But the big message from me on this one is it is so much fun to freehand, almost doodle with embroidery onto these basic shapes that I'm hoping that rather than necessarily following step by step as I've done these ones, that you're going to get even more creative with them and produce even more fantastic results that I will love to see as well. So the first thing that I just want to cover is how you actually attach the plate, the crocheted plate, onto the hoop. So what you're going to be doing is a standard increase pattern, so something you'll all be very familiar with in your sixes, right the way up until it is the correct size for your hoop. It's the inner of the hoop that we're attaching it onto. So if you'll see the actual frame, I've left those separate in these ones. So it's the inner of the hoop that you just need to slot out first. And the only thing really to point out is the position of the yarn, because what you're going to want to do is when you're double crocheting this last round, you're going to double crochet in like that, but have your yarn around the outside of it so that you can actually crochet like that around the hoop itself, and that way you're not going to have to sew it on or anything like that. So I'll just show you that one more time. You'll go in, yarn over with that yarn right the way around the hoop itself, and then yarn over with it coming up the other side. So you go in over the top, around, and then through, and that'll really nicely put a lovely ridge or rim of double crochet stitches on the edge just to finish it off. So how I really intended these to be used is a great way of learning all these different embroidered stitches. There's so much fun to be had embroidering onto crochet, and I think you can really see that in the figurines. But if you are new to this, maybe you've not learned the stitches before, doing it on something flat like this circle plate can be a great place to start, because it means that you can actually use the grid of the crochet itself to actually count stitches if you want to keep all the stitches the same size and things like that. So once you finish, just break that yarn and then you'll be able to sew that end in. Right, so let's go through the basic stitches. Now, these are all detailed in your pattern. And now what I've done here is on all the plates, I've only chosen to use 2 contrast colours. So you've got your cream base plate. Here I've got blue and sapphire. The third blue that you'll see used in some of these plates is the hyacinth. So what you need to do, we're going to be using a wool needle. You could choose to use the skinny wool needles if you find them a bit easier, a bit more control, but your regular wool needle will be absolutely fine. And cut yourself off a length of the double knit in the colour that you're going to use. So don't make it too long. Don't be tempted to make it too long, because all you'll find is that you tangle it up a little bit as you go along. So the first one that I'm going to cover is going to be a running stitch. Now, you can probably tell I'm not very good at doing the same thing twice. So I'm going to do a different pattern altogether here as we put this one together, so that you can really get a feeling for how free you can be with the doodling element. So bring your wool needle through with your yarn like that and bring it right the way through, but leave a bit of a length on the back so that we can tidy those up afterwards if you want to. And the running stitch, I guess, is the most basic one. What you're going to do, I'm going to do a 3-stitch running stitch on this one. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, count my stitches, and then go in here. And then I'm going to do a 2-stitch gap, so, and then miss 2. So 1, 2, 3 in and miss 2. And what I really want to show you is how much you're using the actual crochet to keep a track of where you are. So obviously what I'm doing is I'm sewing into the gaps in between the rounds like that. So let me go again. So 1, 2, 3 in and then miss 2 as we turn the corner. 1, 2, 3 and miss 2. So that is your basic running stitch. Now I've gone there for an even one. So I've gone for 3 is the length of the stitch and 2 is the gap. Obviously you can do it any which way you want to in terms of it being 2. It could be even, it could be a short one with a bigger gap, however you then want to use that running stitch. All that you want to bear in mind, and that's all I'm going to point out, is if you are a definite perfectionist and you know this about yourself, what you might just want to check before you commit to a pattern like that is that you're working it into the middle of a round that mathematically adds up to that number. Now, if you're somebody who knows that if we were embroidering this on a regular piece of canvas where it wasn't marked by that and you wouldn't worry about things like that, then just proceed as normal. But I know that a lot of you are mathematically brained, and so what you will want to do is to make sure 1, 2, 3 that the round that you're doing this on would be divisible by 5, for example, because I'm doing 3 and a 2. Whereas if you're going to do a 2 and a 2, you'd want to make it divisible by 4. If you're just going to do a 1, like a short one and then out again, then you'll know that it'll be divisible by everything. So go right the way around. So because we're working in a non-stop spiral, when you get to the end, so when you come right the way back doing your circle, when you're working on the plate, you'll have this dilemma where if you carry on the same line that you're on, you'll obviously be stepping up, reflecting that jog in terms of the colour changing. But what I would say to give you the neatest finish, the best thing is probably to cross back in to the round that you started on, and that way you will get a complete circle rather than a very obvious jog that runs right the way down your plate. So once you've finished a circle, and that is the running stitch that I've done there, I guess the most basic, what you can do is just, if you want to get a nice neat finish, I'd leap across to the back of this one and just secure your thread off on that one. And then you can go back and sew in the other end later. Now, the nice thing is, obviously, no one's going to be looking at the back of your work at all, but still good practice to make it nice and tidy as you go along. Right, so that's running stitch, the most basic one. Now I'm going to do a back stitch to show you that one. So with a back stitch, what we're doing is we're making steps forward and then steps backwards upon ourselves. So what we're going to do is, say I'm setting off here, I'm going to come 2 stitches backwards, but then 2 stitches forwards underneath. So 2 stitches on the top, backwards, and then 2 stitches forwards underneath, then 2 stitches backwards on the top. So then it would be effectively 2 stitches in front of it, so 4 stitches total. And that is a back stitch. So 2 backwards again to join the end of that one. Effectively 4 forwards, 2 behind it, 2 in front of it. So that is a 2 stitch back stitch like that. Now this stitch that I'm going to show you next is one more step to the back stitch, and this isn't actually, I've not used this in the standard plate patterns, but I have used it on the figurines in order to create really neat, often curved lines. So do you see here on the top of the head, what I've done is back stitched some stitches and then I've whipped around them, and that gives you that lovely solid line curve of embroidery. Same with around the bottom of the feet. So let me just show you what you do there. So once you have completed your line of back stitches, what you're going to do is then whip around them. So finish your back stitches like that, come back out. And by whip stitch, all it means is to basically wrap it around it. So you're going to go in underneath the back stitch like that, and you just literally sew over the edge like this. It's whipping around that back stitch. And what it means is, rather than it presenting as lots of smaller broken stitches, it presents as a solid line. Now, this is me doing it using the same colour. So this is obviously me using the blue to whip on a solid blue back stitch as well. So you can see the difference there. quite rapidly actually between the two. So this is your regular backstitch, this is your whipped backstitch where it becomes a solid line. But all I want to show you quickly, again, not something that I've used in either of the plates or the figurines, but a really effective technique is to actually whip in a contrasting colour. So what that would look like is if I joined in here with the hyacinth and I were to whip these back stitches, but in a contrasting colour, you get a lovely candy cane effect of the two colours together. So if you want to, again, if you really get into this, which you might find you will, enjoy exploring a few more extra stitches, and that is a really nice, attractive one. Do you see how you get a lovely, really evenly spiraled stitch like that? The reason why it stays even is because your back stitches are obviously all the same length. So just make sure that I'm just whipping once into each of these stitches here. So you get a really, really nice effect on that whipped back stitch if you use two colours. Right, on to the next stitch. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be a chain stitch. This one almost looks like you are slip stitching on the surface of the fabric. So it almost looks, that's this one here. That's it in the blue. That's that chain stitch there. In this one, you can see it here, the hyacinth. So it almost looks like you're doing a slip stitch on the surface or a chain in terms of crochet terms. So to do a round of the chain stitch, again, bring your yarn through. And what you're going to do is go back into where you've come from, but then bring your needle forward. So you're going back into the stitch that you come out of, underneath, and then your needle forward to the length that you want this chain stitch to be. So this is 2 stitches here. Wrap around like that, and then bring that through. So this is a 2-stitch chain stitch like that, and then you just do the same thing again. So you're going to go back in to the one that you came from. If you're going to keep them all the same length, then go 1, 2 down again, wrap that around, and then go back through. So that's what they look like when they are 2 long. You could even vary this as you go along. So that's 2. You could then put in a longer one if you wanted to. So 1, 2, 3. The brilliant thing about embroidering onto the crochet is obviously the stitches set the lengths. So it's not that you're having to be kind of, the thing that I've found when I'm more freehand embroidering is it is my discipline in keeping the stitches the same length that makes it look neat. Whereas here you're almost cheating because you've got a grid to be able to actually crochet in. So there, that's 2, the 2 there, a 3, and then a 2. That is the chain stitch. That's all there is to it. It can be really, really effective at giving you that nice thicker line of stitches that almost resembles the chains. Quite reflective of obviously the double crochet stitch edges that sit around the edge as well. So that's that one. What I'm going to show you next then is the daisy stitch. So this has been used, I've used this a lot on every single design, and I'll point out where. So what I'll show you how to do here is this kind of fern effect. What we're doing is we're using daisy stitches, which are these ones here. I've used longer ones down to shorter ones in order to show that growth. It's the way I've also done the stars. So I'll show you those as well, because I've used the stars. I think I've used this quite heavily on all of them. So on the elephant, we've got the star at the bottom of the feet like that. And we've got very much got the stars coming into the owl. So these daisy stars are used all over to almost give that geometric pattern. So what I'll do is I'll put a big daisy star into the center, and then I'll do some of those ferns so you can see those as well. So with the daisy stitch, what you need to do is get your yarn in there first. You're going to go into how long you want that stitch to be and wrap it around. So very similar to the chain stitch so far. Wrap it around like that. But then what we're going to do is fix it in place by actually going across the top of it. So you're just going to tack the stitch in place by going across the top and then back in to the one that it came out of, like that. So what you've got is a long stitch with that little tack stitch at the top that then holds it in place. So to do a star, it really is as simple as you go in and you do 5 of those like that. Now, when doing something in the center like this, remember that obviously you have used your 6 times table. So you are going to have 6 natural increase points that you might want to work to. So if you decide to do a 5 prong star like I have here, you're going to have to be a little bit creative on where you've put them. In fact, it lends itself much more, the center, to a 6. So let me show you that one there, because it means that I can also then put one in there so that you've got a 6 pronged daisy star like that. Let me show you how I've done the ferns. So I'm going to actually doodle these ones, I think, downwards from the top. So I'm going to go the opposite way around. And I might use, I'm going to use the hyacinth so it's nice and easy for you to see the stitches. So if you're going to be doing these ones that I've used on Dalton's ears, I've also used them on the arms of a lot. What you need to do is you do 1 long stitch first, which will be the length then of the whole of the fern. So do put that in and come back down to the bottom. Then if we're going to do them from the larger towards the smaller, you come in and it's going to be a daisy stitch that we work at the bottom like that. And on the other side, and then come in to the actual central line like that. And I'm actually going to come up through the yarn itself, which means it'll hold it in place nicely in a straight line down the middle. And then I'm going to do another one, but slightly smaller, so 1 stitch smaller than I did last time. Back to that central line. And then finally, for a smaller one again, it's going to come 1 stitch out. And I'm never sewing through the actual stitches themselves. I'm always sewing into the gaps in between the stitches. There we go, like that. So that's how you create that lovely fern shape that I've used here really effectively, using that cream yarn on the high contrast bits on the back of the ears. Whereas this is obviously one of those stars. There's in a six prong star that you've seen used in the center. Here we've got the running stitches, and the daisies are creating the V's on the side of the head, whereas this is just simple long stitches here, so you can see all of those. So the last thing really that I need to teach you will be the French knot. So these 3D little bobbles that I've used almost to represent, I guess, seeds or flowers. If you look at sewing like that, this is almost, in my mind, it's representing a plant, and these are the flowers or the buds that sit on them. To do those, what I've done is a French knot. So I'll show you again. In fact, I'm going to use the blue. Now, what I will say is, don't approach it in the way that I have here with a little bit of one of something. When you're doing your plate, really think about doing it as a whole. So making sure you do a whole rotation of something before you then move on to the different technique. What I'm probably going to do here is have to go away and work out what I'm now going to do to simplify this down a little bit, because I have gone kitchen sink with all the colours as well. So to do a French knot, what you're going to do is come up again in the same way, and then using your needle, you're going to wrap the yarn around the needle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then back through the stitch that you've come out of. Now, when I say wrap 5 times, the more times you wrap, the bigger this will be. And so it depends on the kind of effect that you really want. But 5 is what will make it as big as that. So I'm going to show you that again. So bring your needle up and through. Then bring the needle down close to the surface of the fabric is the easiest way of doing it. And wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And then back in from where you came out. And then pull it through and it just secures it in place. So let's go again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in. Like that. Now, if you get one that's not as neat, so you see how that one hasn't pulled through as neatly as the others, I would just say it's so easy to pull it back and go again that don't live with them if you end up with a couple that aren't as neat as the others. You are using a wool to sew into what is quite an open fabric in terms of a stitch. So if you get one like that where you're not happy with it, all you need to do is pull it back and then go again. Now, I'm actually unwrapping this, but you could just obviously snip it off and then secure it into the back if you wanted to. I'm just going to unwrap that and I'm going to go again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and back into the stitch. There we go, much better that time. So I hope you really enjoyed doing these. As a last finisher, I just want to talk you through the stitches so you start to recognise them on the various figurines. So Dalton is the original one that is obviously included in the TOFT Quarterly magazine. Here I've used all the different stitches, and that's what's quite nice is you get to use a little bit of all the different stitches. Again, you can start to see that fern shape wider going down to a narrower shape there. Then this is Denby, who I think is my favourite of the 4 different designs. So I started here on the back, kind of this is a whipped back stitch here to give me a straighter line, but again used those fern motifs. Just did simple long stitches to create zigzagging there, although you can also back stitch a zigzag if you want to, so you can use those in different ways. And then finished off with these French knots across the edges of the ears. Then on to Josiah. So really with this one, I took a lot of looking at the way that the birds tended to be decorated when they were figurines. And a lot of them took a more geometric approach. So I put the star in to begin with. So a 5-pointed star into the centre of the head, and then took those 5-pointed stars right the way through. So I've got long stitches in between them like that in the contrasting colour. And then joining up those stars just with those long stitches. Same across the front. So you can see you've got the stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's long stitches running in between. And then finally, Moira the cat. I really wanted to go for these big long ferns. And this time these are whipped down the middle. So exactly the same technique that you saw me do here, but just to make those lines a bit bolder, I've actually whipped those afterwards. So you get those lovely, strong, straight lines down that long stitch that's through the center. So I really hope you enjoy creating some of these, and what I really hope you do is do some different ones to mine. Obviously, a lot of you are very used to Edward's Menagerie patterns, whether be that birds or animals, even the non-standard forms. I would absolutely love you to try different ones. Now, just to throw it out there, Walter, I'd love to see a Walter. If anyone wants to try a Walter, that's definitely on my to-do list. But start with a basic one first. If you've never embroidered before, go for one of these basic Edward's Menagerie animals, because you'll really be able to enjoy bringing it to life with the detail that you put on afterwards. And then once you're feeling more confident, then yeah, absolutely go for it. I'd love to see this style of embroidered detail going on to all the different shapes, whether it's in this classic kind of Delft colourware palette of the blues and the cream, or combining up different TOFT spectrums as well. So I hope you've got everything that you need. Do pop any questions if you do have them on there, but I hope you enjoy bringing these figurines to life as much as I do.